Jasmine Richardson's manicured finger hovered over her phone's power button as the aircraft fell silent. "This flight isn't going anywhere," she announced, her voice cutting through the first-class cabin. 20 years building Skyline Industries, and today she'd finally use her power to correct an injustice nobody saw coming. Before we dive into this incredible story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more stories about powerful people standing up against discrimination. Are you ready to discover how one woman's courage changed an entire industry? Let's get into it. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows as Jasmine Richardson reviewed the quarterly reports on her tablet. From the 42nd floor of Skyline Technologies' Manhattan headquarters, she could see tiny airplanes cutting through, clouds like silver needles threading across blue fabric. At 42 years old, she had built her aviation software company from a dorm room project into a billion-dollar enterprise that revolutionized flight safety protocols worldwide. "Ms. Richardson, your car is waiting," announced William, her assistant of 7 years. "Your flight to San Francisco departs in 3 hours." Jasmine nodded, sliding the tablet into her designer bag. "The Aviation Technology Excellence Award ceremony starts at 8, correct?" "Yes. And the investors from Quantum Capital will meet you at the Fairmont at 10 tomorrow morning," William confirmed, handing her a folder with the day's itinerary. "The board is quite excited. This recognition could push our stock even higher." Jasmine smiled, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her tailored navy suit. Today represented the culmination of decades of work, dreams, and persistence against impossible odds. As her private car navigated Manhattan traffic, Jasmine's thoughts drifted to her childhood in Harlem. She could still picture her mother coming home exhausted after long shifts as a flight attendant, her uniform crisp despite the 16-hour workday. Their tiny apartment offered a distant view of LaGuardia's runway lights, and young Jasmine would press her face against the window, imagining the destinations beyond those blinking beacons. "You keep watching those planes, baby," her mother would say, "but don't you just dream about serving drinks on them. You dream about owning them." That dream had seemed almost laughable at her predominantly white private school, where she'd earned a rare scholarship. In her junior year, when she'd expressed interest in aviation engineering, her guidance counselor had stared at her with thinly veiled amusement. "Aviation engineering isn't really for black girls, Jasmine," the woman had said with artificial sweetness. "Perhaps nursing or education would be more suitable." The memory still stung, but it had only fueled her determination. Jasmine had graduated top of her class at MIT, earning dual degrees in computer science and aerospace engineering. Her thesis on artificial intelligence applications in flight navigation had caught the attention of several major airlines, but corporate America had presented its own obstacles. She remembered her first job at Tech Air Systems, where colleagues routinely mistook her for administrative staff despite her credentials. During her first major presentation, a white male coworker had interrupted her repeatedly, then later presented her algorithm as his own work to senior management. "You should be flattered," her supervisor had told her when she filed a complaint. "Besides, clients respond better to Ryan. It's just business, nothing personal." 2 years later, Jasmine had developed the prototype for what would become SkyGuard, the AI-powered navigation system that could predict and prevent flight anomalies before human pilots could detect them. When Tech Air dismissed the concept as too experimental, she had resigned the next day and founded Skyline Technologies. The car pulled up to JFK's Terminal 5, and the driver quickly came around to open her door. "Have a wonderful flight, Ms. Richardson," he said, retrieving her designer luggage from the trunk. Jasmine tipped him generously and strode toward the premium check-in counter, confidence in every step. Her mother had passed away 3 years ago, but she knew she would have been proud. Today wasn't just about an award. It was validation of her mother's belief that her daughter could achieve anything, despite the barriers society placed in her path. As she approached the check-in desk, Jasmine had no idea that the next few hours would test that confidence in ways she couldn't imagine. She was about to face a battle that would expose the ugly reality that even at the pinnacle of success, some people would only ever see the color of her skin. The premium check-in area gleamed with polished marble and soft lighting, designed to make wealthy travelers feel their importance. Jasmine approached the counter where a white male attendant named Bradley was typing rapidly on his computer, not bothering to look up as she stood before him. "Next," he called out, still not lifting his eyes. "Good morning," Jasmine said pleasantly. "I'm checking in for the Aurora Airlines flight to San Francisco." Bradley glanced up briefly, his eyes doing a quick assessment before returning to his screen. "Economy?" "First class," Jasmine corrected, sliding her ID and platinum frequent flyer card across the counter. Something flickered across Bradley's face. Surprise, maybe skepticism. He picked up her identification and studied it with unusual intensity, turning it over several times as if searching for signs of forgery. "This flight is quite full today," he said, his tone noticeably cooler. "Can I see your confirmation number?" Jasmine opened her phone and displayed the electronic ticket. Bradley scrutinized it for nearly a minute. "Is there a problem?" she asked, maintaining her professional composure. "Just being thorough," Bradley replied, typing something into his computer. "We've had issues with certain people trying to upgrade inappropriately." Before Jasmine could respond, a white businessman in his 50s approached the adjacent counter. The female attendant greeted him with a warm smile. "Good morning, Mr. Whitman. How are you today? San Francisco again? I'll have you checked in right away." No request for multiple forms of ID, no scrutiny of his confirmation number. The entire process took less than 40 seconds. Bradley finally printed Jasmine's boarding pass and baggage tag, pushing them across the counter without making eye contact. "Security is that way," he said dismissively, already looking past her to the next customer. At the security checkpoint, the line moved efficiently until it was Jasmine's turn. The TSA agent examined her first-class boarding pass with a frown. "Step over here, please," he directed, motioning to the area for additional screening. "You've been randomly selected for enhanced security." Jasmine complied silently, knowing there was nothing random about it. As she stood with arms outstretched in the body scanner, she noticed the subtle glances exchanged between agents. After the scan, a female agent patted her down thoroughly, paying special attention to her hair. "We need to check for prohibited items," the woman explained, her gloved hands moving through Jasmine's carefully styled curls. 20 minutes later, Jasmine was finally allowed to gather her belongings. She had experienced this routine countless times before, the random selections that somehow always seemed to target her and other passengers of color. The humiliation was a tax she had paid throughout her professional life, but it never became easier to bear. The first-class lounge offered a temporary sanctuary. Jasmine found a quiet corner and opened her laptop to review her acceptance speech one last time. She had barely begun when a lounge attendant approached. "Excuse me," the young white woman said. "This area is for first-class passengers only." Jasmine looked up calmly. "Yes, I'm aware. I'm flying first class to San Francisco." The attendant's expression remained dubious. "May I see your boarding pass, please?" After verifying her credentials, the attendant left without an apology. 15 minutes later, a different staff member approached with the same question. By the third interruption, Jasmine had given up on her speech review and was simply sitting, with her eyes closed, practicing meditation techniques to maintain her composure. From a nearby seating cluster, she overheard fragments of conversation from two businessmen. Affirmative action gone wild. How else would someone like her afford? Probably use the race card to get to wherever she is. Jasmine kept her expression neutral, though her grip tightened on her armrest. These moments were nothing new. The assumptions, the skepticism, the casual dismissal of her achievements. On any other day, she might have confronted them, educated them on the realities of being a black woman in corporate America. But today was about her award, her moment of recognition after years of struggle. She wouldn't let anyone tarnish that. The lounge speakers crackled with an announcement. Aurora Airlines Flight 372 to San Francisco is now boarding at Gate A7. We will begin with our premium passengers and those needing special assistance. As Jasmine gathered her belongings, the announcement continued. Today's flight will be captained by Richard Thompson, a 25-year veteran with Aurora Airlines. Our estimated flying time is 6 hours and 7 minutes. The name triggered a distant memory, but Jasmine couldn't immediately place it. She made her way to Gate A7, where passengers were already forming lines. The priority lane for first-class travelers was significantly shorter, and Jasmine took her place behind an elderly white couple. The gate agent, a blonde woman whose name tag read Karen, greeted the couple warmly before turning to Jasmine with a markedly different expression. "Boarding pass and ID," Karen demanded flatly. Jasmine provided both. Karen studied them with the same excessive scrutiny Jasmine had faced. At check-in, "This is the first-class line," Karen stated, her tone suggesting Jasmine had made a mistake. "Yes, I'm aware," Jasmine replied evenly. "I have a first-class ticket, as you can see." Karen frowned, examining the boarding pass again before reluctantly scanning it. The machine beeped in confirmation. "You might be more comfortable waiting with the economy passengers," Karen suggested. "They'll be boarding soon." "I'm quite comfortable here, thank you," Jasmine said firmly, holding Karen's gaze until the woman looked away. "Fine," Karen muttered, returning the documents. "Have a nice flight." As Jasmine walked down the jetway, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. These individual incidents might seem minor in isolation, but their accumulation over a single morning was unusual, even by her experienced standards. It felt almost orchestrated, as if the universe were testing her patience on what should have been one of her proudest days. Little did she know the real test was about to begin once she stepped onto the aircraft. Jasmine stepped aboard Aurora Airlines Flight 372, the familiar smell of recycled air and upholstery cleaner greeting her. The head flight attendant stood at the entrance, a tall woman with graying blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. Her name tag read Patricia. "Welcome aboard," Patricia said automatically, then paused as she took in Jasmine's appearance. The warmth in her voice cooled noticeably. "May I see your boarding pass?" Jasmine presented it for what felt like the 100th time that morning. "First class is to the left," Patricia said after a reluctant glance. Her tone suggested she was providing information Jasmine couldn't possibly already know. Jasmine nodded politely and turned toward the first-class cabin. She located her assigned seat, 1A, a window position in the first row. As she prepared to stow her designer carry-on in the overhead compartment, Patricia suddenly appeared at her side. "Excuse me," Patricia said loudly enough for other passengers to hear. "There must be some mistake. This is a first-class seat." Jasmine maintained her professional demeanor, despite the obvious implication. "Yes, I'm aware. 1A is my assigned seat." She showed her boarding pass again. Patricia frowned, examining the document with exaggerated care. Before she could respond, a white man in his early 50s approached, dressed in an expensive suit with a silk pocket square. "I believe you're in my seat," he said to Jasmine, his tone carrying absolute certainty. "I don't think so," Jasmine replied calmly. "My boarding pass says 1A. "So does mine," the man countered, producing his own boarding pass with a flourish. "James Wilson, seat 1A. Patricia immediately took his boarding pass and compared it to Jasmine's. Both indeed showed the same seat assignment. "There's clearly been a mistake," Patricia declared, though her gaze suggested she'd already decided whose claim was valid. "I'll get the captain," she announced, hurrying toward the cockpit. Other first-class passengers were now openly staring at the unfolding drama. Jasmine stood perfectly still, her expression neutral despite the burning humiliation. She had faced versions of this scenario throughout her career. The assumption that she didn't belong in premium spaces, that her presence was an error to be corrected. Minutes later, Patricia returned with the captain. He was tall, with silver hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. His nameplate read, Capt. R. Thompson. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked, though his attention was directed solely at James Wilson. Patricia explained the situation, while the captain barely glanced in Jasmine's direction. When she tried to speak, he held up his hand in a silencing gesture that sent a jolt of indignation through her. "Let me see both boarding passes, Captain," Thompson said, finally acknowledging Jasmine's presence with a cursory look. He examined Wilson's pass carefully, nodding as he verified the information. When he took Jasmine's, his inspection was perfunctory at best. The system must have double-booked the seat, he concluded. Then, turning to Wilson, "When did you check in, sir?" "Yesterday evening online," Wilson replied smoothly. The captain nodded as if this settled the matter. "And you, miss?" he asked Jasmine. "This morning at the premium counter," Jasmine answered. "But I booked this specific seat 3 months ago." Captain Thompson's expression made it clear her statement carried little weight. "Well, Mr. Wilson checked in first, so technically he has priority according to airline policy." What airline policy said no such thing? But Jasmine recognized the familiar dance of rules being invented or selectively applied. "Patricia," the captain continued, "is there another first-class seat available?" Patricia shook her head with what appeared to be satisfaction. "Unfortunately, first class is completely full today." "That's not my problem," Jasmine stated firmly. "I paid for a first-class seat and checked in properly." The captain's expression hardened. "Perhaps you don't understand aviation protocols." "Miss, when conflicts arise, the captain's decision is final. Mr. Wilson will take seat 1A. "And where exactly am I supposed to sit?" Jasmine asked, her voice level despite her rising anger. Patricia interjected, "We have one remaining seat in economy near the lavatory. We can provide a partial refund for the difference." Several first-class passengers were watching the exchange with thinly veiled amusement. One woman whispered to her companion just loud enough for Jasmine to hear, "Some people just don't know their place." Jasmine felt a familiar burn in her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced when professors ignored her raised hand, when executives talked over her in meetings, when security guards followed her through department stores. But today, something was different. Today, she had power. "I'd like to speak with you privately, Captain," she requested. "I'm preparing for takeoff," he dismissed. "If you're not satisfied with our solution, you're welcome to take another flight." The condescension in his tone was the final straw. Jasmine reached for her phone. "That won't be necessary," she said calmly, "but I do need to make a quick call." Before anyone could object, she stepped away and dialed a number from memory. The conversation lasted less than 30 seconds. "I'll take the economy seat," she informed Patricia afterward, her sudden compliance clearly surprising the flight attendant. As Jasmine was escorted to the back of the plane, she maintained perfect composure. The economy seat was exactly as described, the last available spot, directly adjacent to the lavatory, with minimal legroom and a seat that didn't fully recline. What do you think about the way Jasmine was treated by the airline staff? Comment number 1 if you believe she should have stood her ground right then and there, or number 2 if you think her calm response was the right move. Don't forget to hit that like button if you've ever witnessed or experienced similar discrimination while traveling. How would you handle being repeatedly questioned about belonging in a space you paid for? And what power move do you think Jasmine has planned after that mysterious phone call? Trust me, you'll want to subscribe now because what happens next will completely change the power dynamic on this flight. 6 months earlier, the executive boardroom of Aurora Airlines had been filled with tension. 12 white men in nearly identical suits sat around a polished mahogany table, their attention fixed on the presentation screen, where Jasmine Richardson was concluding her pitch. "Skyguard doesn't just detect potential mechanical failures," she explained, highlighting a complex diagram. "It anticipates them 48 to 72 hours before conventional systems, giving maintenance crews critical additional time. In our 3-year test phase with Pacific Regional, we reduced emergency landings by 78% and saved an estimated $36 million in prevented catastrophic failures." Victor Hayes, Aurora's CEO, leaned forward with interest. "And the integration timeline?" 4 months for the full fleet," Jasmine replied confidently. "We've streamlined the process considerably since our early implementations." From the far end of the table, a throat cleared pointedly. Captain Richard Thompson, Aurora's senior pilot representative, had been scowling throughout the presentation. "With all due respect, Mr. Hayes," Thompson interjected, "I have serious reservations about entrusting our aircraft to this kind of system." "This kind?" Jasmine asked, her expression neutral despite recognizing the implication. "Software designed by a woman with no actual flying experience. Thompson clarified, not bothering to mask his disdain. Pilots train for thousands of hours. We develop instincts no computer can replicate. Jasmine had maintained her professional smile. Captain Thompson, Skyguard doesn't replace pilot instinct. It enhances it by providing data analysis beyond human capability. And while I've never piloted commercially, my team includes 6 former commercial pilots and 3 aerospace engineers with pilot certification. Still, Thompson had insisted, in my 20-plus years of experience, your experience is precisely why we need this system, Captain, Victor Hayes had interrupted. Last year, human error and delayed maintenance responses cost this airline $93 million and damaged our safety reputation. The board has already approved this partnership. Thompson's face had reddened, but he'd fallen silent. After the meeting, as Jasmine was gathering her materials, she'd overheard him muttering to a colleague, "This is what happens when diversity hiring overtakes common sense." Now, sitting in the cramped economy seat of Flight 372, Jasmine reflected on that encounter as the aircraft remained stubbornly parked at the gate. 40 minutes had passed since she'd been relegated to the back of the plane, and they showed no signs of departure. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Thompson's voice crackled over the intercom, "we're experiencing some minor technical difficulties. Our maintenance team is addressing the issue, and we expect to be underway shortly. We appreciate your patience." Jasmine opened her tablet and navigated to a secure company portal. As she suspected, the minor technical difficulties were precisely the kind of issues Skyguard had been designed to prevent. Aurora had signed the contract, but had repeatedly delayed the system's full implementation, citing various bureaucratic obstacles. A quick search through aviation forums revealed something interesting. Captain Richard Thompson had a documented history of complaints, particularly from female passengers and crew members of color. 3 formal discrimination complaints had been filed against him over the past decade, all mysteriously resolved without disciplinary action. Her phone vibrated with an incoming text from her CFO. "Aurora stock down 12% this quarter. They're in trouble without our system. Board meeting emergency session now." Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Aurora Airlines was financially vulnerable, and the successful implementation of Skyline's software was probably their best hope for recovery. Yet here was their senior pilot, seemingly sabotaging that relationship by mistreating the very CEO whose technology they desperately needed. As the delay stretched into its second hour, Jasmine received another text, this one from her head of acquisitions. "Purchase complete. We now control 30% of Aurora Airlines stock. You're officially their largest shareholder." Jasmine allowed herself a small smile. The plan she'd set in motion 3 months ago, when she'd first identified Aurora as both a potential client and acquisition target, was coming to fruition faster than anticipated. Today had been scheduled as the formal activation date for Skyguard across Aurora's entire fleet, a move that financial analysts predicted would boost Aurora's stock by at least 15%. Instead, Captain Thompson was unwittingly demonstrating exactly why the airline needed new leadership and technology. The irony wasn't lost on Jasmine. Another announcement from the cockpit. "Folks, we're still working through some system checks. Our new estimate for departure is 30 minutes from now. We apologize for the inconvenience." Passengers groaned collectively. A young white woman in the seat beside Jasmine sighed heavily. "I'm going to miss my connection at this rate," she lamented. "I have a law school interview tomorrow morning." "Where are you interviewing?" Jasmine asked, welcoming the distraction. "Stanford," the woman replied. "I'm Tanya Mitchell, by the way." Jasmine Richardson. "Stanford has an excellent program. I considered law before choosing engineering." Tanya smiled. "I almost went into tech myself, but after seeing how my brother was treated in a corporate discrimination case, I decided I could do more good as an attorney." She hesitated, then added more quietly, "Though sometimes I wonder if I'm just setting myself up for the same battles. The legal world isn't exactly welcoming to black women either." "No industry is," Jasmine agreed. "But that's precisely why we need to claim our space in them." Their conversation was interrupted by a new announcement requesting any passengers with medical training to identify themselves to the flight crew. an elderly man in business class, had become distressed due to the extended delay and needed attention. Jasmine watched as confusion unfolded. Without proper communication systems, flight attendants were running back and forth trying to locate a doctor. The captain made another announcement asking the unidentified medical passenger to come forward, but the chaotic messaging meant 10 minutes passed before appropriate help reached the distressed passenger. It was yet another failure that Skyguard's crew communication module would have prevented. The system included a passenger manifest feature that could instantly identify medical professionals on board and their exact seating locations. Patricia appeared, moving down the aisle with a drink cart. When she reached Jasmine's row, her service became noticeably perfunctory. "Water," Jasmine requested. Patricia practically tossed the plastic cup at her, spilling a few drops on Jasmine's designer slacks. "Oops," Patricia said without apology, already moving to the next row. As Jasmine dabbed at her pants with a napkin, she overheard two flight attendants conversing in the galley behind her. "Refuse the alternative route," one was saying. Dispatch recommended the southern corridor to avoid the weather system, but he insisted this route was faster. "Classic Thompson," the other replied. "Remember when he made us fly through that turbulence over Colorado? 3 passengers vomited, and Maria sprained her wrist, but heaven forbid we add 20 minutes to the flight time." The comment aligned with what Jasmine already knew. Captain Thompson's reputation for arrogance extended beyond his discriminatory attitudes. He routinely disregarded recommendations from air traffic control and dispatch if they conflicted with his personal judgment. Through the window, Jasmine could see dark clouds gathering to the west. A summer thunderstorm was approaching the airport, threatening to delay them even further if they didn't depart soon. Her phone rang. William, her assistant. "Ms. Richardson, the board is trying to reach you. Aurora's CEO has called 5 times in the last hour. He seems desperate." "I imagine he is," Jasmine replied calmly. "Tell them I'm currently experiencing the quality of Aurora's customer service firsthand and will respond when I'm ready. Also, the Aviation Excellence Committee called to confirm you'll make tonight's ceremony. Should I tell them about the delay?" "Not yet," Jasmine decided. "Let's see how this plays out first." As she ended the call, Tanya glanced at Jasmine's watch, a limited edition timepiece worth more than most cars. "That's an amazing watch," Tanya commented. "If you don't mind me asking, what do you do?" Jasmine smiled enigmatically. "I solve problems. Some might say I'm quite good at it." The captain's voice came over the intercom again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're now 10th in line for takeoff. Our estimated departure time is 20 minutes from now. Again, we apologize for the inconvenience." The announcement was delivered with the casual confidence of someone who believed his word was beyond question. Captain Thompson clearly had no idea who was sitting in economy or the storm, both literal and figurative, that was about to engulf his career. By the 2-hour mark of their delay, the atmosphere inside the aircraft had deteriorated significantly. Children were crying, business people were frantically rescheduling meetings on their phones, and a palpable current of frustration ran through the cabin. The air conditioning struggled to maintain a comfortable temperature with so many bodies confined in the stationary aircraft. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Thompson's voice announced for the 4th time, "we appreciate your continued patience. We're currently addressing a minor discrepancy in our navigation systems. Safety is our primary concern at Aurora Airlines." A chorus of groans greeted this update. The man across the aisle from Jasmine slammed his tray table upward. "Minor discrepancy? We've been sitting here for 2 hours." Tanya shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "At this rate, I might as well start looking for flights to tomorrow's interview." "Tell me about your brother's discrimination case," Jasmine suggested, partly to distract Tanya from their situation and partly out of genuine interest. Tanya's expression darkened. Andre was a software developer at TechCore Industries. Despite consistently outperforming his white colleagues, he was passed over for promotion 3 times. When he finally confronted his manager with documentation of his achievements compared to those who were promoted, he was terminated for creating a hostile work environment. "Let me guess," Jasmine said. "The company had an arbitration clause in his employment contract." "Exactly," Tanya confirmed. "The arbitrator, selected and paid by the company, found no evidence of discrimination. Andre was blacklisted in the industry and had to relocate to Atlanta to find work. That's when I decided to pursue civil rights law. It's a familiar story, Jasmine acknowledged. When I started in aviation software, Her words were cut short by another announcement, this one from Patricia. If there are any medical doctors on board, please press your call button immediately. We have a situation requiring medical attention. Jasmine and Tanya exchanged concerned glances. Through the gaps between seats, they could see flight attendants rushing toward the front of the plane. It's Mr. Abernathy, a passing flight attendant informed her colleague in a hushed voice. His heart medication is in his checked luggage, and he's showing signs of distress. Why didn't we identify medical personnel during the delay? The other attendant questioned. We've been sitting here for hours. You know Thompson doesn't like using the passenger manifest system. Says it's an invasion of privacy. Another outdated policy that Skyguard would have addressed. The system included an optional health profile feature for passengers who chose to share medical information, precisely for emergencies like this. Eventually, a cardiologist from business class was located and escorted to assist the elderly passenger. The doctor seemed frustrated by the limited medical supplies available on board. This man needs proper attention, Jasmine overheard him telling Patricia. The delay is exacerbating his condition. He should be removed from the aircraft and taken to a hospital. I'll inform the captain, Patricia replied. 10 minutes passed with no announcement or action. Jasmine checked the aviation weather app on her tablet. The approaching storm was now less than 30 minutes from reaching the airport. If they didn't depart or return to the gate soon, they risked being caught in dangerous conditions. Patricia appeared again, moving hurriedly through the cabin. As she passed Jasmine's row, she deliberately avoided eye contact. "Excuse me," Jasmine called out. "Is there an update on the passenger requiring medical attention?" Patricia paused, her expression cold. That information is only shared on a need-to-know basis. And the departure status? The storm is approaching rapidly. The captain is aware of all relevant factors, Patricia responded dismissively, continuing down the aisle. Jasmine's phone vibrated with an incoming call, an Aurora Airlines number. She silenced it without answering. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Another call immediately followed, this one from Skyline's board chairman. Jasmine decided this one warranted her attention. "Richardson," she answered quietly. "Jasmine, what's happening?" the chairman demanded. "Hayes from Aurora is in panic mode. Says you're on one of their flights and there's some kind of situation developing." "Indeed there is," Jasmine confirmed. "I've been experiencing Aurora's approach to customer service and discrimination firsthand. It's been quite educational. The activation ceremony for Skyguard may need to be rescheduled," Jasmine interrupted. "I'm beginning to question whether Aurora Airlines in its current form is the right partner for our technology." Silence followed her statement. The chairman understood the implications. Aurora needed Skyline far more than Skyline needed Aurora. "The stock purchase was completed 20 minutes ago," he finally said. "You're now effectively in control of their company. Whatever you decide, the board will support you." "I appreciate that," Jasmine replied. "I'll be in touch shortly." As she ended the call, Tanya was looking at her with newfound curiosity. That sounded intense. "Just business," Jasmine said casually. "Sometimes people need to be reminded of the consequences of their actions." The cabin lights flickered momentarily, followed by a noticeable drop in the air conditioning output. Outside, the first fat raindrops began to splatter against the windows as the storm's outer bands reached the airport. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Thompson's voice announced, "due to a developing weather system, we're expediting our departure. Procedures. Flight attendants, prepare for immediate takeoff." The announcement was met with skeptical murmurs. After hours of delays for technical difficulties, the sudden urgency seemed suspicious. Through her aviation weather app, Jasmine could see that the storm was now classified as severe, with potential for lightning strikes and wind shear, conditions that made takeoff particularly dangerous. An incoming text message caught her attention. "Aurora board an emergency session. Hayes says Thompson refusing to return to gate despite medical emergency and weather concerns. Claims pilot discretion. This was no longer just about discrimination or poor customer service. Captain Thompson was potentially risking the safety of everyone on board through his stubborn refusal to acknowledge mistakes or accept guidance. "Tanya," Jasmine said quietly, "you might want to collect your belongings. I don't think we'll be taking off today after all." "Why? What's happening?" Before Jasmine could explain, her phone rang again. This time, she decided to answer. "This is Jasmine Richardson. Ms. Richardson, this is Victor Hayes, CEO of Aurora Airlines." His voice carried the strained politeness of someone in serious trouble. "I understand you're on our Flight 372 to San Francisco." "Indeed I am, Mr. Hayes. In economy class, beside the lavatory, despite having paid for first class. It's been quite the experience so far." There was a momentary silence before Hayes responded. "I've just been briefed on the situation. Please accept my deepest apologies for the treatment you've received. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." "Has there?" Jasmine's tone was cool. "Because from where I'm sitting, literally, it seems less like a misunderstanding and more like a pattern of discriminatory behavior. Behavior that extends beyond customer service and into operational decision-making that affects safety." Another pause. "Ms. Richardson, I assure you—" "Mr. Hayes," Jasmine interrupted. "In approximately 10 minutes, this aircraft will be in the middle of a severe thunderstorm. You have a passenger experiencing a medical emergency who needs immediate attention. Your senior pilot has refused multiple recommendations to return to the gate, and your flight crew has demonstrated blatant discrimination against me personally. As the new majority shareholder of Aurora Airlines, I find these circumstances unacceptable." The stunned silence on the other end of the line confirmed that Hayes hadn't been fully aware of Skyline's stock purchase. "What would you like us to do?" he finally asked, his voice notably weaker. "Have the control tower order this aircraft back to the gate immediately," Jasmine instructed, "and meet me there personally. It's time we address the cultural and safety issues at Aurora Airlines, starting with Captain Thompson." "Right away," Hayes agreed hastily. "I'll be there myself within 15 minutes." As Jasmine ended the call, she noticed Patricia watching her from the galley, a mixture of confusion and concern on her face. The flight attendant had clearly overheard enough to realize something significant was happening, but didn't yet understand what. Captain Thompson's voice came over the intercom one last time. "Flight attendants, be seated for takeoff. We are cleared to—" His announcement cut off abruptly. After a moment of silence, a new voice, presumably the co-pilot, spoke instead. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been instructed to return to the gate. We apologize for the continued delay and thank you for your patience." The aircraft began to move, but instead of heading toward the runway, it turned back toward the terminal. Through the windows, Jasmine could see emergency vehicles with flashing lights positioned near their assigned gate. Tanya turned to Jasmine, with wide eyes. "Did you just ground this plane with a phone call?" Jasmine simply smiled. "Like I said, I solve problems." As Flight 372 slowly taxied back to the gate, a palpable shift in energy swept through the cabin. Passengers who had been resigned to their fate now leaned forward in their seats, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding. Rain lashed against the windows with increasing intensity, validating the decision to abort the takeoff. Captain Thompson's voice was noticeably absent. Instead, the co-pilot made all subsequent announcements, his tone professionally apologetic, as he explained that a passenger requiring medical attention would be disembarking first, followed by a brief operational meeting before the flight could continue. Patricia and the other flight attendants moved through the cabin with renewed efficiency, their previous indifference replaced by an almost nervous energy. When Patricia passed Jasmine's row, she deliberately avoided eye contact, though Jasmine noticed her sneaking glances when she thought she wasn't being observed. As the aircraft pulled into the gate, Jasmine unbuckled her seatbelt and stood. "Excuse me," Patricia approached immediately. "All passengers must remain seated until I need to move to the front of the aircraft," Jasmine interrupted calmly. "That's not possible," Patricia insisted. FAA regulations clearly state, Patricia, Jasmine addressed her directly, in approximately 2 minutes, your CEO will board this aircraft looking for me. I suggest you reconsider your position. The flight attendant's expression flickered between disbelief and uncertainty. Before she could respond, another crew member whispered something in her ear. Patricia's face paled visibly. I'll escort you to the front, she stammered. Her earlier confidence evaporated. As Jasmine made her way forward through business class, she noticed the curious stares of passengers wondering who this woman was and why she was receiving sudden VIP treatment. When they reached the first-class cabin, James Wilson, still comfortably ensconced in seat 1A, looked up with a frown. "What's she doing back here?" he demanded of Patricia. Patricia ignored the question, her attention focused on the jetway door which was now opening. A small delegation of men in business suits rushed onto the aircraft, led by a harried-looking man in his 60s, whom Jasmine recognized as Victor Hayes, Aurora's CEO. "Ms. Richardson," Hayes called out, extending his hand. "I cannot express how deeply—" "Mr. Hayes," Jasmine cut him off. "We have several urgent matters to address, beginning with the passenger requiring medical attention." Hayes nodded rapidly. "Medical personnel are boarding now. Is there somewhere we could speak privately?" "The cockpit would be appropriate," Jasmine suggested, "since many of my concerns involve your captain's decision-making." Hayes hesitated, only briefly before nodding. "Of course, this way." As they moved toward the front of the aircraft, Jasmine paused beside James Wilson. "You'll need to gather your belongings, Mr. Wilson. You won't be continuing on this flight." Wilson's face reddened. "Excuse me? Who do you think you are?" "She's Jasmine Richardson," Hayes interjected, "CEO of Skyline Technologies and now the majority shareholder of Aurora Airlines." The color drained from Wilson's face. There must be some misunderstanding about the seating arrangement." "Indeed there was," Jasmine agreed coolly. "One that will be clarified shortly." At the cockpit door, Hayes knocked before opening. Captain Thompson was still in his seat, his posture rigid with indignation. When he saw Jasmine enter behind Hayes, his expression darkened further. "Victor, what is the meaning of this?" Thompson demanded. "Tower ordered me back to the gate without explanation, and now you're bringing unauthorized personnel into my cockpit?" "Richard," Hayes began cautiously, "this is Jasmine Richardson, CEO of Skyline Technologies." "I don't care if she's the Queen of England," Thompson snapped. "FAA regulations prohibit non-crew members in the cockpit during operations." "Operations have been suspended," Hayes informed him. "And Ms. Richardson isn't just the CEO of our software partner. As of today, she effectively controls this airline." Thompson's jaw went slack momentarily before his expression hardened again. "This is absurd. We have a flight to complete." "A flight you've mismanaged from the beginning," Jasmine stated matter-of-factly. "You've ignored safety protocols, disregarded weather warnings, delayed medical assistance to a passenger in distress, and demonstrated blatant discrimination against me personally." "Discrimination?" Thompson scoffed. "Don't play the race card with me, Ms. Richardson. I was simply following standard procedures for resolving a seating conflict." "Were those same standard procedures in effect when you questioned the competence of my company based on my gender? Or when you orchestrated a campaign of harassment from the moment I checked in for this flight?" Thompson's eyes widened slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Captain Thompson," Hayes intervened. "Multiple staff members have already confirmed they received unusual instructions regarding Ms. Richardson's flight today." A commotion from the cabin interrupted their conversation. Through the open cockpit door, they could see Patricia engaged in a heated discussion with another man in an Aurora executive uniform. The man pushed past her and approached the cockpit. "Victor, we've got a situation," he announced. "Security has detained James Wilson from first class. He's admitted to being a corporate intelligence operative for Meridian Air. He deliberately created the seating confusion as part of an industrial espionage operation." Thompson's face went ashen. "Did you know about this, Captain?" Hayes demanded. "Of course not," Thompson blustered, but his eyes betrayed him, darting nervously between Hayes and the door. Captain Thompson coordinated with Wilson, Jasmine stated with certainty. They've been working together to undermine the Skyguard implementation. That's preposterous, Thompson exploded, rising from his seat. This woman comes in here making wild accusations without a shred of evidence, and you're taking her word over a 25-year veteran pilot? Hayes looked increasingly uncomfortable. Richard, we need to discuss this calmly. No, Victor. What we need to do is complete this flight, Thompson insisted. I'm still the captain of this aircraft, and I'm ordering everyone out of my cockpit right now. Actually, Richard, Jasmine said quietly, you're not the captain anymore. She stepped back into the first-class cabin where passengers were watching the drama unfold with rapt attention. In a clear, authoritative voice that carried throughout the forward section of the plane, she announced, Ladies and gentlemen, this flight will be delayed further while we resolve some personnel issues. Aurora Airlines apologizes for the inconvenience. Thompson pushed past Hayes to confront Jasmine directly. You have no authority to make announcements on my aircraft. It's not your aircraft, Captain Thompson, Jasmine corrected him. It belongs to Aurora Airlines, which now answers to me. This is ridiculous, Thompson's voice rose, drawing the attention of every passenger. You people always think you can just waltz in and take over whatever you want. The racial undertone of his comment hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several passengers gasped. Someone had started recording the confrontation on their phone. You people? Jasmine repeated, her voice deadly calm. Please clarify what you mean by that, Captain Thompson. Thompson realized his mistake too late. He glanced around at the sea of shocked faces and recording devices. I meant software executives. You tech people. I see, Jasmine said. Is that also why you told the Aurora board 6 months ago that software designed by a woman couldn't be trusted? Or why you instructed your staff to single me out for additional screening and verification at every step of my journey today? Thompson's face flushed crimson. You're twisting my words. This is about safety protocols, not race or gender. Is it? Jasmine challenged. Then explain why you ignored multiple safety recommendations today. Explain why you refused an alternative route around the storm system. Explain why you delayed medical assistance to a passenger in distress. I don't have to explain myself to you, Thompson snarled. I'm the captain, and on this aircraft, my word is law. Not anymore, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see a distinguished man in his 60s standing in the jetway door. Bernard Waterston, chairman of the Aurora Airlines board, had arrived. Richard Thompson, Waterston announced formally, you are hereby relieved of duty, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the aircraft. You can't do this, Thompson protested. The pilot union has already been notified of the circumstances, Waterston completed. Your actions today have violated not only company policy but potentially FAA regulations as well. 2 security officers appeared behind Waterston. Captain Thompson, please collect your personal items and come with us. Thompson looked around wildly, searching for allies and finding none. His gaze locked on Jasmine, hatred blazing in his eyes. This is what's wrong with America now, he spat. Unqualified people getting positions they don't deserve just because of how they look. You must have slept your way to the top because there's no way someone like you could build a successful company otherwise. A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. At least a dozen phones were now recording his meltdown. And that, Jasmine said quietly, is exactly why you're finished in this industry. What would you do if you witnessed this kind of blatant discrimination and racism in a professional setting? Comment number 1 if you believe speaking up immediately is the right approach, or number 2 if you think strategic patience like Jasmine's is more effective. Hit that like button if you're amazed by how she maintained her composure throughout this ordeal. How many of you have been in situations where you had to choose between immediate confrontation or playing the long game? And what do you think will happen next for the passengers waiting to reach San Francisco? Subscribe now to make sure you don't miss the incredible way this situation resolves. The stunned silence that followed Thompson's outburst lasted only seconds before erupting into a chaos of voices. Passengers turned to one another, expressing shock and disgust at the captain's blatant racism. Flight attendants stood frozen, unsure how to proceed as their command structure disintegrated before their eyes. The security officers moved forward, flanking Thompson on either side. "This is absurd," Thompson continued, his voice rising to be heard above the commotion. "You're all witnessing a corporate takeover disguised as a discrimination claim. Don't be fooled by this. This performance." "Captain Thompson," one of the security officers said firmly, "please come with us now." Thompson shrugged off the officer's hand. "I've devoted my life to this airline. 25 years of perfect safety records, and this is how you repay me? Because some tech executive got her feelings hurt?" Bernard Waterston stepped forward, his expression severe. "Richard, you've left us no choice. Your behavior today has been inexcusable. And from what I'm hearing, it's part of a pattern we should have addressed long ago." "Pattern?" Thompson scoffed. "You mean enforcing standards? Maintaining the integrity of the cockpit against political correctness and diversity hiring?" Passengers continued recording as Thompson dug himself deeper with each word. Patricia, the head flight attendant who had been complicit in his discrimination, now stood with her back against the galley wall, visibly distancing herself from the imploding captain. "Ms. Richardson," Waterston turned to Jasmine, "on behalf of the entire Aurora Airlines board, I extend our deepest apologies. We had no knowledge of Captain Thompson's views." "Didn't you?" Jasmine questioned, her voice level. "There have been 3 formal discrimination complaints against Captain Thompson in the past decade, all mysteriously resolved without disciplinary action." Waterston looked genuinely surprised, then troubled. "I assure you, the board was never informed of these incidents. That will be part of our internal investigation." Thompson let out a harsh laugh. "Internal investigation? You're going to let her take over and start a witch hunt based on hurt feelings?" "This isn't about feelings, Captain," Jasmine stated. "It's about competence, safety, and the culture of an airline that's about to implement revolutionary safety software. Software that you actively tried to sabotage because you couldn't accept that it was developed by a black woman." "Ridiculous. I oppose that software because it's untested and dangerous." "Untested?" Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Skyguard has been operational with 3 major carriers for over 4 years, reducing incidents by 78%. The only thing dangerous is your ego overriding expert recommendations and safety protocols." Outside the aircraft, the storm had intensified. Rain hammered against the windows, and occasional flashes of lightning illuminated the tarmac. The weather had vindicated Jasmine's concerns. Had Thompson succeeded in taking off, they would now be flying through severe conditions. The co-pilot emerged from the cockpit, looking shaken. "Mr. Waterston, Tower is asking for an update on our status, and they've confirmed what Ms. Richardson said. Dispatch had recommended the Southern Corridor route to avoid this system, but Captain Thompson overrode them." This new information visibly impacted the Aurora executives. Hayes exchanged a troubled glance with Waterston. "Officer Davis," Waterston addressed the security lead, "please escort Captain Thompson to the security office. We'll need a formal statement regarding today's events." "You're making a massive mistake," Thompson warned, his voice dropping to a threatening tone. "The pilot union will shut down this entire airline over this." "I doubt that," Jasmine interjected. "Not once they review the evidence of your conduct and the safety protocols you violated. Unions protect their members, Captain Thompson, but they also maintain the integrity of the profession." As security finally managed to guide Thompson toward the exit, he made one last desperate attempt to salvage his position. Turning to the passengers who were still recording, he appealed directly to them. "This is what happens when we prioritize diversity over qualifications. Look at what's happening to this country. Are you going to let unqualified people take control of your safety just because they check the right identity boxes?" An older white woman in first class stood up, her expression furious. "Young man, I've been flying for 60 years, and I've never heard such disgusting comments from an airline. Professional. I'll be writing to the FAA about your conduct." From elsewhere in the cabin, voices of support joined hers. The tide of passenger sentiment had turned decisively against Thompson. His final appeal had backfired spectacularly. As Thompson was finally removed from the aircraft, James Wilson was next. The corporate spy from Meridian Air was escorted out, in handcuffs, having confessed to industrial espionage in an attempt to delay the Skyguard implementation and damage Aurora's relationship with Skyline Technologies. With both men gone, an uncomfortable question hung in the air. Who would fly the plane? Waterston addressed this concern immediately. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're arranging for Captain Sarah Jenkins to take command of this flight. She's one of our most experienced pilots and was fortunately on standby at the terminal today. We expect to resume our journey to San Francisco within the hour, weather permitting." A ripple of relieved conversation spread through the cabin. Patricia approached Jasmine tentatively. "Ms. Richardson, about your seating arrangement." "I believe 1A is now available," Jasmine observed mildly. "Yes, of course," Patricia agreed hurriedly. "I'll have your belongings moved immediately, and I want to apologize for my part in today's events. Captain Thompson instructed us to, well, there's no excuse for how you were treated." Jasmine regarded her thoughtfully. "You're right, there isn't. But accountability starts with acknowledgement. I suggest you consider whether this is the type of professional you want to be moving forward." Patricia nodded, visibly chastened, and hurried away to arrange the seating change. Meanwhile, Hayes and Waterston conferred quietly with Jasmine. "We'll need to address this publicly," Hayes acknowledged. "The videos are already hitting social media." Jasmine nodded. "Transparency is essential. Aurora Airlines needs to demonstrate that discriminatory behavior isn't tolerated at any level, especially when it impacts safety decisions." "We completely agree," Waterston assured her. "And regarding the Skyguard implementation, we'll proceed as planned," Jasmine confirmed, "though obviously not on this particular aircraft today. I suggest scheduling a formal announcement for tomorrow morning. The story will have broken by then, and we can frame it as part of Aurora's commitment to a new chapter of safety and inclusive leadership." Both men nodded, clearly relieved that the technology partnership remained intact despite the day's events. "There's one more thing," Jasmine added. "The young woman seated beside me in economy, Tanya Mitchell. She's flying to a law school interview at Stanford and will now likely miss her connection due to these delays. I'd like her upgraded to first class for this flight, and I want Aurora to arrange alternative transportation to ensure she makes her interview tomorrow." "Consider it done," Hayes agreed instantly. As the executives left to handle the logistics of the flight continuation, Jasmine returned to economy to find Tanya. "Gather your things," she told the surprised young woman. "You're being upgraded." "What? Why?" Tanya asked, bewildered. "Because talented young attorneys who fight discrimination deserve every advantage," Jasmine replied with a smile. "And because sometimes the universe has a way of balancing the scales." As they made their way to first class, whispers followed them. Passengers who had witnessed the confrontation were now recognizing Jasmine from news coverage of her company. Smartphones discreetly captured photos as the story continued to spread across social media platforms. By the time they settled into their first-class seats, dark Aurora discrimination was trending nationally. The videos of Thompson's meltdown had gone viral, with millions of views and thousands of comments. Major news networks were picking up the story, framing it as a watershed moment in the ongoing conversation about racism and sexism in corporate America. Jasmine checked her phone to find dozens of missed calls from journalists, business associates, and even several civil rights organizations. The private incident had transformed into a public referendum on discrimination in the aviation industry. "Is this really happening?" Tanya asked quietly, as flight attendants who had previously ignored Jasmine now hovered attentively, offering champagne and warm towels. "This is what accountability looks like," Jasmine replied. "Sometimes it takes a perfect storm, literally, in this case, to expose systems that need changing." Outside, the weather was beginning to clear as the storm moved eastward. Captain Sarah Jenkins, a veteran pilot with impeccable credentials, boarded the aircraft to a spontaneous round of applause from informed passengers. Her professional demeanor and confident announcements provided a stark contrast to Thompson's arrogance. As the newly configured Flight 372 finally prepared for takeoff, Jasmine looked out at the clearing sky and allowed herself a moment of reflection. The day had not gone as planned, but perhaps it had gone exactly as needed. Sometimes progress required disruption, and systems only changed when brave individuals refused to accept the status quo. The aircraft began to move, finally heading toward the runway under new leadership. The journey to San Francisco would be delayed, but the journey toward a more equitable industry had taken a significant leap forward. The Boeing 787 cruised at 37,000 feet, its powerful engines humming steadily as it made up time across the continent. In first class, Jasmine sipped sparkling water while reviewing her revised acceptance speech on her tablet. The Aviation Technology Excellence Award ceremony would start in 3 hours, tight, but manageable if their flight maintained its current speed. Beside her, Tanya Mitchell was immersed in Stanford Law School materials, occasionally making notes in the margins. The young woman had been quietly processing the day's extraordinary events, stealing occasional glances at Jasmine as if still trying to reconcile the composed executive beside her with the power player who had grounded a plane and fired a discriminatory pilot. "You keep looking at me like I might disappear," Jasmine observed with a smile. Tanya laughed self-consciously. "Sorry, it's just, I've never seen anyone handle discrimination like that before. Usually we're told to document everything, file complaints, and hope someone eventually listens. You just change the entire system in hours." "Not everyone has the leverage I had today," Jasmine acknowledged. "But remember, that leverage came from years of building something valuable enough to give me a seat at the table, or in this case, a seat in first class." Captain Jenkins's voice came over the intercom, professional and warm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached our cruising altitude and expect to arrive in San Francisco approximately 40 minutes ahead of our revised schedule. The weather ahead looks clear, and we should have a smooth flight. On behalf of everyone at Aurora Airlines, I want to thank you for your patience during today's unusual circumstances." Several passengers around them glanced at Jasmine knowingly. News of the incident had spread throughout the aircraft, transforming what would have been an ordinary flight into something akin to a historic moment. Flight attendants, including Patricia, moved through the cabin with visible attentiveness, particularly when serving Jasmine and Tanya. "Ms. Richardson," Patricia approached cautiously, "the purser asked me to inform you that several media outlets are waiting at SFO for your arrival. Our corporate communications team can arrange for you to exit through a private entrance if you prefer." "That won't be necessary," Jasmine replied. "But thank you for the consideration." After Patricia moved on, Tanya leaned closer. "You're going to face the media?" "Absolutely," Jasmine confirmed. "When discrimination is exposed, silence only protects the status quo. This isn't just about one captain or one airline. It's about patterns that exist throughout corporate America." Jasmine's phone vibrated with incoming messages. William had been managing the crisis communications back in New York, coordinating with Skyline's PR team to develop a unified response. His latest update indicated that Aurora's stock had initially dipped on news of the incident, but was now rallying as investors responded positively to the swift leadership change and the confirmed SkyGuard implementation. More significantly, Skyline's stock had jumped nearly 12% as the market digested both the Aurora acquisition and the publicity surrounding Jasmine's stand against discrimination. Financial analysts were already framing it as a textbook example of ethical leadership creating shareholder value. "Ms. Richardson," a flight attendant interrupted, "we have a secure air-to-ground call for you from Mr. Hayes." Jasmine accepted. The handset. "Victor, how are things progressing?" "Better than expected," Hayes reported. "The pilot union reviewed the evidence and has officially distanced themselves from Thompson. They're emphasizing their commitment to safety and professional conduct above all else." And the public response? Overwhelmingly supportive. The videos show Thompson's behavior so clearly that there's no room for interpretation. "We've issued a formal statement apologizing for the incident and announcing a comprehensive review of our company culture." "Good," Jasmine approved. "And Wilson?" "Confessed everything. Apparently Meridian Air has been targeting Aurora for months, trying to destabilize us before the SkyGuard implementation. They knew it would give us a competitive advantage. Have your legal team prepare a full briefing. We'll need to determine whether criminal charges are appropriate." After ending the call, Jasmine noticed Tanya watching her with renewed interest. "You make it look so easy," Tanya observed, "standing your ground without losing your composure, even when facing blatant racism." "It's never easy," Jasmine corrected gently. "And it wasn't always this way. Early in my career, I had to choose my battles carefully. Sometimes I spoke up and faced retaliation. Other times I stayed silent and let the injustice eat away at me. Neither approach felt right. So, what changed? I built power," Jasmine stated simply. "Not just financial power, though that helps, but knowledge, connections, reputation, the kind of power that can't be easily dismissed or explained away. When that pilot saw me initially, he saw only my race and gender. He never imagined I could be the key to his company's survival." Tanya nodded thoughtfully. "I've been considering dropping out of law school. The constant microaggressions, the double standards. Sometimes it feels like I'm fighting a battle I can never win." "The legal field needs voices like yours precisely because of those challenges," Jasmine pointed out. "But you don't have to fight alone. Have you considered a corporate internship while you complete your studies?" "I've applied to several, but the competition is intense. Skyline Technologies has a legal department that's expanding with our recent acquisitions," Jasmine mentioned casually. "We emphasize diverse perspectives and ethical leadership. If you're interested, I could arrange an interview when we return to New York." Tanya's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely. Talent deserves opportunity. Sometimes it just needs someone to open the door." Their conversation was interrupted by a ping from Jasmine's tablet, a news alert. She opened it to find that the Jasmine Richardson and Dr. Aurora discrimination were the top trending topics on multiple social media platforms. The videos of the confrontation had now been viewed over 10 million times, and the story had been picked up by every major news network. More surprisingly, the incident had sparked a movement. Dozens of Black executives across various industries had begun sharing their own experiences with discrimination using the hashtag #TrueMyFirstClassStory. Their accounts range from being mistaken for service staff to having their authority questioned in spaces they had earned the right to occupy. "Something bigger is happening," Jasmine murmured, scrolling through the growing collection of stories. "This isn't just about one flight anymore." "You've become a symbol," Tanya observed. "You showed people that discrimination can be confronted directly when you have the leverage." Jasmine nodded slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Her speech for tonight's award ceremony would need significant revisions. What had been planned as a standard acceptance address now needed to acknowledge the movement that was forming around her experience. As the flight continued westward, Jasmine received another call, this one from Bernard Waterston. "Ms. Richardson, we've completed our preliminary review of Captain Thompson's personnel file. It's worse than we initially realized. There were at least 7 formal complaints buried by previous management, not just the 3 you mentioned." "I'm not surprised," Jasmine replied. "Systemic problems rarely exist in isolation." "That's why I'm calling," Waterston continued. "The board has unanimously voted to offer you the position of executive chairperson. We believe Aurora needs not just your technology, but your leadership to transform our corporate culture." The offer was unexpected, but logical. With Skyline now controlling 30% of Aurora's stock, Jasmine already had significant influence over the company's direction. Formalizing that role would send a powerful message about Aurora's commitment to change. "I'll consider it," she promised. "But regardless of my decision, Aurora needs a comprehensive anti-discrimination policy with real accountability mechanisms. The days of bearing complaints and protecting problematic employees must end." "Absolutely," Waterston agreed. "We're prepared to implement whatever reforms you recommend." After ending the call, Jasmine gazed out the window at the landscape, passing below. The vast expanse of the American Midwest stretched to the horizon, a patchwork of farms and communities that represented the nation in all its complexity. Somewhere down there, countless individuals were facing their own battles against discrimination without the advantages she now possessed. Her thoughts were interrupted by the captain's voice announcing their initial descent into the San Francisco area. The flight that had begun with humiliation and injustice was about to conclude with a very different energy. As the aircraft began its descent, Tanya turned to Jasmine with a question that cut to the heart of the day's events. "Do you think anything will really change because of what happened today?" Jasmine considered this thoughtfully. Systems don't change overnight, and progress isn't linear. But sometimes a single incident can create a crack in the foundation of inequality. Our job is to keep widening that crack until the entire structure is forced to transform. The seatbelt sign illuminated as the airplane banked gently toward San Francisco International Airport. Through the windows, the iconic Golden Gate Bridge came into view, spanning the entrance to the bay with its distinctive red-orange towers. "Look," Jasmine pointed. "Bridges connect separate lands, creating passage where there was once only division. That's what we're doing today, building bridges of understanding. It's not enough to reach the other side ourselves. We have to ensure the path remains open for those who follow." As the aircraft made its final approach, Jasmine could see the unusual number of news vans gathered near the terminal. What had begun as a personal indignity had transformed into a national conversation about race, power, and accountability in corporate America. The wheels touched down with a gentle bump, and Captain Jenkins's voice came over the intercom one last time. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to San Francisco International Airport. Local time is 5:47 p.m. and the temperature is a pleasant 68 degrees. On behalf of Aurora Airlines, I want to thank you for choosing to fly with us today." As the aircraft taxied to the gate, passengers began to prepare for disembarkation. Many glanced toward Jasmine with expressions of respect and admiration. A few approached to express their support or share their own experiences with discrimination. Patricia appeared at Jasmine's side as the aircraft reached the gate. "Ms. Richardson, we've arranged for you and Ms. Mitchell to disembark first. There's quite a crowd waiting." Jasmine nodded, gathering her belongings. "Thank you, Patricia, and I hope our paths cross again under better circumstances." "I hope so too," Patricia replied quietly. "Today has been educational for many of us." As the aircraft door opened, Jasmine and Tanya stepped forward to face whatever awaited them in the terminal. The journey that had begun with a denied seat had evolved into something far more significant, a challenge to the status quo and a demand for accountability that would resonate far beyond the confines of a single aircraft. 6 months later, Jasmine Richardson stood at a polished wooden podium in the grand ballroom of the San Francisco Fairmont Hotel. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the new joint logo of Skyline Aurora Technologies, the corporate entity formed after the complete acquisition of Aurora Airlines by Skyline Technologies following the infamous Flight 372 incident. "When I boarded that flight 6 months ago," Jasmine addressed the rapt audience of aviation industry leaders, government officials, and technology innovators, "I was simply a CEO traveling to accept an award. I had no idea that journey would become a catalyst for industry-wide transformation." The ballroom was filled to capacity for the inaugural Diversity in Aviation Leadership Conference, an event that had drawn participants from 47 countries. In the front row sat Tanya Mitchell, now the rising star of Skyline Aurora's expanded legal department, dressed in a tailored suit that reflected her rapid professional evolution. "The statistics speak for themselves," Jasmine continued, gesturing toward the data displayed on the screen. "In the 6 months since implementing our comprehensive inclusion initiatives, Skyline Aurora has seen a 23% reduction in operational incidents, a 34% increase in employee satisfaction, and a 41% improvement in customer experience ratings." She paused, letting the numbers sink in before delivering the most significant metric. "Most importantly, our safety record has improved dramatically, with 0 major incidents across our entire fleet since the full implementation of SkyGuard. Technology and our reformed corporate culture." The audience applauded enthusiastically. Among them were several former Aurora executives, including Victor Hayes and Bernard Waterston, who had embraced the new direction under Jasmine's leadership. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Some resistant managers had departed, and the integration of 2 corporate cultures had required careful navigation, but the results were undeniable. "This success didn't come from technology alone," Jasmine emphasized. "It came from recognizing that safety and inclusion are inseparable. When we create environments where every voice is heard and every perspective valued, we catch potential problems before they become crises. From her vantage point at the podium, Jasmine could see the entire room. Near the back, barely noticeable in his baggage handler uniform, stood Richard Thompson. After being terminated from Aurora, he had been unable to secure another pilot position. His meltdown video having become a case study in unconscious bias training programs across multiple industries. Eventually, desperate for work, he had taken an entry-level position with a ground services company at SFO. Jasmine had known he would be there, not by coincidence, but by design. She had specifically requested that all airport staff be invited to the conference, regardless of position. Thompson's presence wasn't about humiliation. It was about education and the real consequences of discriminatory behavior. Today, I'm proud to announce the establishment of the Jasmine Richardson Scholarship for Minority Women in Aviation, Jasmine revealed, her voice softening as she mentioned her mother's name. This program will provide full tuition and mentorship to 50 promising students annually, creating a pipeline of diverse talent for every aspect of our industry, from pilots to engineers to executives. The screen behind her displayed photographs of the first cohort of scholarship recipients, young women from various backgrounds who shared the determination Jasmine had felt watching planes from her Harlem apartment window decades ago. These young women won't have to fight the same battles I did, Jasmine continued. They'll face new challenges, certainly, but they'll do so with institutional support, visible role models, and the knowledge that their perspectives are not just welcomed, but essential to the future of aviation. In the 6 months since Flight 372, the ripple effects had extended far beyond Aurora Airlines. The viral videos of Thompson's discrimination and subsequent meltdown had prompted congressional hearings on workplace discrimination in the transportation sector. Multiple airlines had reviewed their internal policies and implemented more robust reporting mechanisms for bias incidents. The FAA had launched a comprehensive study of how bias might impact safety decisions in the cockpit. The first-class seat incident was never just about a seat, Jasmine explained. It was about who is perceived to belong in positions of privilege and power, whose expertise is valued, whose safety concerns are heeded. When we dismissed Captain Thompson that day, we weren't simply responding to one man's prejudice. We were rejecting a mindset that has constrained our industry's potential for too long. Tanya nodded from the front row, her expression reflecting how deeply she connected with Jasmine's words. In the months since their shared flight, she had not only excelled in her legal role, but had become a spokesperson for the company's mentorship program, helping other young professionals navigate predominantly white corporate environments without sacrificing their authentic selves. Our work isn't finished, Jasmine acknowledged, surveying the room. True transformation requires sustained commitment, not just reactive policy changes in response to viral moments. That's why Skyline Aurora has embedded accountability metrics in every level of our organization, from hiring practices to promotion criteria to supplier diversity. She clicked to the next slide, which displayed the company's new leadership team, a diverse group that reflected a wide spectrum of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. This is what innovation looks like, she stated confidently. Different viewpoints challenging each other, questioning assumptions, and arriving at solutions that serve everyone, not just those who have traditionally held power. Near the middle of the audience sat Patricia, the former head flight attendant from Flight 372. Following the incident, she had requested to join Skyline Aurora's newly formed Inclusion Task Force, determined to transform her complicity into positive action. Now she led flight crew training on recognizing and addressing bias in passenger interactions. Some people ask me if I'm still angry about what happened on that flight, Jasmine continued, her tone thoughtful. The truth is, anger alone doesn't create change. What drives me is the vision of what's possible when we remove arbitrary barriers and allow everyone to contribute their full potential. She paused, making eye contact with different sections of the audience. I'm not interested in simply adding diversity to broken systems. I'm committed to transforming those systems entirely. The audience erupted in applause. Even Thompson, standing at the back in his baggage handler uniform, seemed affected by her words, his expression a complex mixture of emotions. As the applause subsided, Jasmine prepared to deliver her closing remarks. Behind her, the screen changed to show a photograph of a sleek new aircraft, the first to bear the Skyline Aurora livery. "Tomorrow morning I'll be boarding another flight," she announced, "but this time as the owner of the airline." More applause, punctuated by cheers from Skyline Aurora employees, scattered throughout the audience. "And the captain of that inaugural flight will be someone very special, Captain Danielle Watson, one of the first recipients of our educational initiative for underrepresented youth that we started 15 years ago." The screen displayed a photograph of a confident young black woman in a pilot's uniform, standing proudly beside a cockpit. When Danielle was 12 years old, she attended a science camp sponsored by my foundation. She told me then that she wanted to fly planes, and I promised to help make that possible. Tomorrow, she'll take command of our newest aircraft, completing a circle that represents everything I believe about breaking barriers and creating opportunity. Jasmine's voice filled with emotion as she continued. "I'll be sitting in seat 1A, exactly where this journey began 6 months ago. But this time, no one will question whether I belong there." She gripped the edges of the podium, her expression intensifying. "That's the real measure of progress, not just that I can claim my rightful space, but that the next generation won't have to fight as hard to claim theirs." As Jasmine concluded her speech, the entire audience rose in a standing ovation. The applause continued for nearly 2 full minutes, a resounding endorsement of her vision for a more equitable industry. Later, as attendees mingled during the reception, Tanya approached Jasmine with 2 glasses of champagne. "To changing the game," Tanya toasted. "To changing the players," Jasmine countered with a smile, clinking her glass against Tanya's. They stood together, observing the diverse gathering of industry leaders engaged in animated conversations about innovation, inclusion, and the future of aviation. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out if you just accepted that economy seat?" Tanya asked. Jasmine considered the question thoughtfully. "Every day, but not with regret, with gratitude. That moment of injustice created an opportunity for transformation that might have taken decades otherwise." "You turned discrimination into a corporate takeover," Tanya marveled. "That's not in any business school curriculum I've studied." "Perhaps it should be," Jasmine replied. "The most powerful business strategy is one that aligns moral imperatives with market opportunities. We didn't just acquire an airline, we revolutionized an industry's approach to inclusion." As the evening drew to a close, Jasmine found herself standing near the exit, accepting congratulations from departing guests. One of the last to approach was Richard Thompson, his baggage handler uniform stark against the formal attire of the other attendees. "Ms. Richardson?" he acknowledged stiffly. "Mr. Thompson," she replied, her tone neutral but not unkind. He hesitated, clearly struggling with what he wanted to say. "Your speech, about changing systems, not just adding diversity to broken ones, it made me think." "That's a start," Jasmine observed. "I'll never fly commercially again," Thompson stated, a fact rather than a complaint. "But I have a grandson who wants to be a pilot. He's mixed race." He paused, visibly uncomfortable. "I don't want him facing the kind of barriers that exist." Jasmine studied him carefully, recognizing the complexity of human growth. "The scholarship program is open to all qualified applicants. He's welcome to apply when he's of age." Thompson nodded once, then turned to leave. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation. Those would require much more than a single conversation. But it was an acknowledgement that change could touch even the most resistant minds when the evidence became undeniable. The next morning, as promised, Jasmine boarded the inaugural Skyline Aurora flight. The terminal was filled with media, employees, and aviation enthusiasts eager to witness the moment. As she walked down the jetway, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Not just the infamous Flight 372, but the decades of determination that had preceded it. Captain Danielle Watson greeted her at the aircraft door, resplendent in her new uniform with 4 gold stripes on each shoulder. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Richardson," she said with a proud smile. Seat 1A is ready for you." "Thank you, Captain Watson," Jasmine replied warmly. "I'm looking forward to a smooth flight." As she settled into her seat, Jasmine gazed out the window at the bustling airport activity. The incident that had begun with denial and discrimination had catalyzed a transformation far beyond what she could have imagined that day. One moment of standing firm against injustice had changed not just her life, but an entire industry's trajectory. The aircraft door closed, and Captain Watson's confident voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Skyline Aurora, Flight 01. Today marks not just our inaugural flight under our new identity, but a commitment to an aviation future where everyone belongs, everyone contributes, and everyone soars." As the plane taxied toward the runway, Jasmine Richardson allowed herself a moment of pure satisfaction. The circle was complete. The barriers weren't gone. Such fundamental changes required ongoing vigilance and commitment, but they had been named, challenged, and irrevocably weakened. The wheels lifted off the tarmac, and Skyline Aurora Flight 001 climbed into the clear blue sky, carrying with it the promise of a more inclusive future. One bold decision at a time. What's your takeaway from Jasmine's powerful story? Has there been a moment in your life where you stood up against discrimination and created positive change? Comment below with your experiences or thoughts on how we can all contribute to more inclusive environments. If this story inspired you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more powerful narratives of courage and transformation. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that sometimes the greatest changes begin with a single moment of standing firm in your truth. Thank you for joining me for this journey. Until next time, remember that your voice matters and your courage can transform systems beyond what you might imagine. Jasmine Richardson's journey offers powerful lessons about confronting discrimination with strategic patience and strength. Her story shows that sometimes the most effective response to racism isn't immediate outrage, but calculated action that creates lasting change. By maintaining her composure and leveraging her position of power, Jasmine transformed a personal indignity into industry-wide transformation. The story illustrates how discrimination often operates in subtle layers, from questioning belongingness to undermining authority, and how these microaggressions compound to create hostile environments. However, it also demonstrates that systems can change when brave individuals refuse to accept the status quo. Perhaps most importantly, Jasmine's experience highlights the connection between discrimination and safety. When prejudice influences decision-making, it doesn't just hurt feelings, it creates genuine risks. By linking inclusion to operational excellence, Jasmine found a compelling business case for diversity that extended beyond moral arguments. The ultimate lesson is that true leadership means creating pathways for others. Jasmine didn't just claim her own seat at the table. She rebuilt the entire table so more people could join. Her victory wasn't simply personal vindication, but the creation of sustainable systems that would benefit generations to come. What moments of discrimination have you witnessed or experienced that could have been turning points for positive change? Have you ever been in a position where strategic patience served you better than immediate confrontation? Share your stories in the comments below. If this account of courage and transformation resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more powerful narratives about overcoming injustice. These stories matter not just for awareness, but as blueprints for creating more equitable environments in our own spheres of influence. Share this video with someone who needs encouragement to stand firm in their truth, or with leaders who have the power to transform their organizations. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Jasmine's experience. Until next time, remember that your voice matters, and sometimes the smallest stand can create the biggest change.